here today to kind of help celebrate that. Yeah, thanks. Henry's perpetual motion down here. Sorry. All right, if you'll take your Bibles and turn to Ephesians, we're going to take a look at Ephesians chapter 5, and I'm just going to read this probably all the way to chapter 6. Now, we're going to be diving into this at different levels as we go forward, but this is kind of the foundation today of what we're talking about and what marriage means, what it means for believers, how God is the institutor of marriage, and how many people miss in our culture today. They think that marriage is just an institution that evolved somehow. Marriage is God's idea, and marriage is about Christ's relationship to the church. If you're a believer and you're in a marriage relationship, your relationship, when it works properly, according to what God has called us to do and be, it represents to the world what Christ's love looks like for the church. And we see that when we go through this passage. It's extremely important that you understand that marriage is more than, it is a foundational piece of a culture and a society, but it's more than that as believers because it represents a profound truth about the love that Christ has for his body. So would you stand up with me, please, as we read God's word? Ephesians 5:22. Wives, be subject to your own husbands as to the Lord. All the women go, boo. No, just kidding. We're going to talk about why that's important. Now, guys, before you get too puffed up, because a lot of guys like to stop right here with verse 22. It's kind of like, yeah, I've got that one memorized. You throw that around like he uses that thing like a weapon. If you know what movie that's from, you're good. So anyway, verse 23. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is also the head of the church, he himself being the Savior of the body. But as the church is subject to Christ, so also the wives ought to be to their husbands in everything. Guys, close attention here. Husbands, love your wives. Now, what is the standard? Just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, so that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, that he might present himself to himself, the church, and all of her glory, having no spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she would be holy and blameless. So husbands ought also to love their own wives. Now, guys, sometimes we can be a little thick about this. This is why I think Paul went to it twice. You know, he began by, husbands, love your wives the way Christ loved the church. And then he comes back here in verse 28, husbands, love your wives, love your own wives as their own bodies, because he who loves his own wife loves himself. For no one has ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ also does the church, because we are members of his body. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother, shall be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is great, but I'm speaking with reference to Christ and the church. There's the direct reference of what we are to the world and representing who Jesus is to the church. Nevertheless, each individual among you also is to love his own wife, even as himself, and the wife must see to it that she respects her husband. Thank you. You can be seated. Now, the respect your husband part comes back to the beginning of that passage when it talks about in loving submission. But here's the things, guys. Here's the thing, guys. If you want your wife to fulfill the role of being the encourager and respecter of you, if you love her the way Christ loves the church, think about it, guys. We're called to die for our wives. That's the kind of devotion that we're supposed to have for our wives. Now, sometimes we have this little thing when Denise and I are going out to dinner. Usually we decide, where we're going to go, but sometimes we're kind of riding around looking for a restaurant, and I'll say to her, well, where do you want to go? And she'll pick a restaurant that's not maybe my favorite. And sometimes it's the same thing. I might pick one that's not necessarily her favorite. I mean, how many cheeseburgers can you eat in a marriage relationship? But anyway, we're riding around looking for a place, and if she picks a restaurant that I don't particularly like, I'll say to myself, okay, sometimes I say it out loud, I'm dying right here. I'm dying because to die for another person is in essence to do for them the thing that lifts them up and makes them glow on the inside, is to love your wife or husband in a way that speaks to the world the respect that comes from what it means to be one flesh. And I'm going to tell you something about one flesh very quickly. You cannot get there in a short period of time. Becoming one flesh is a process of growing together, of sharing life together, of being devoted to each other. You know, Denise and I never talked about divorce because it was never an option. Now, we've had arguments. I mean, thankfully, they haven't been that many. I did throw the checkbook at her one time, but it was mainly because I had no idea what to do with it otherwise, so I just thought it'd be a good thing to toss in her direction. I don't do the math. I don't do the finances. She does that. So yes, we've had some disagreements where we had to kind of work things out. But there's never been a time when we looked at each other and, you know what, said, we're done here. This is too much. I don't want to do this anymore. I've always wanted to do this. Now, look, divorce happens. And what we need to know about that is that God is merciful and full of grace toward us. And when a broken relationship happens, God can bring reconciliation, but God can also, in a divorce, bring peace in a person's life. I mean, and I'm not advocating, obviously I'm not for it, but I'm just saying that people who go through that can find the comfort and the grace and the strength to bear and persevere through a very difficult breakup of a relationship if you turn to the Lord for that. And please don't turn to the world's advice. I mean, I'm fascinated sometimes when I hear somebody say something like, well, I've been talking to this guy at work about how to get along better with my wife. And I'm like, really? Well, has he got a good marriage? Well, it must be. It's the third one that he's had. So I'm just figuring, you know, that he probably knows he's got a lot of experience. I'm like, what? You're trying to work through a problem. You need to turn first to the Lord. All right, let me talk a little bit about The Love Boat. Some of you might have recognized that theme song. There was a show on in the 1970s and 1980s, and it was extremely popular. It was called The Love Boat. Here's how it worked. You had Captain Merrill Steuben, who was played by Gavin McLeod, and he would welcome people on board every week. In fact, the people that he usually welcomed were actors that were out of a job if they didn't get to go be on the Love Boat. I mean, that's just the way it worked. And so these people would show up, and as they came on the boat, you heard about their problems. They were having all these terrible problems. They'd come on the Love Boat, and during the course of the cruise, which lasted about 47 minutes when you count commercials, they would come off of the Love Boat, and all of their problems had been solved. I mean, it was incredible. It was just it was amazing that this miraculous transformation could take place because people went on a cruise. And I'm telling you, the cruise industry did well during the 70s and 80s because a lot of people bought into that. They thought, okay, this is how we get things better. We'll go on a cruise. It doesn't work that way. In fact, marriage is not like being on the Love Boat because everything that you need is being supplied to you by other people, and you're being served constantly so you can focus on your relationship. Marriage is a little bit different from that. But there are some things that I learned from being on the Love Boat. Now, Denise and I, we didn't have any major problems, so we didn't have anything fixed while we were on the cruise, but I learned some things. And one of the things I learned is what to do in case of emergency. And you need to know in your marriage what to do in case of an emergency. And here's the thing. When we got on the cruise, before we got on that ship, they told us how safe it was, how good their security was, how we had nothing to worry about. What do you think the first thing that we did when we got on the cruise ship? They called us to a muster drill. Now, if you don't know what a muster drill is, it's where you put on life jackets and everybody gets in the same place. They give you a whistle, and on your life jacket is a light so that when you hit the water, it automatically comes on and they can find you, alive or dead. They'll be able to locate you when you put on this life jacket. And they tell you, you know, if the ship goes down, this is what you do. And I'm thinking, man, this is making me feel good and safe and secure. Here we are, everything's going to be fine, and the first thing is this is how you avoid disaster, because disaster may come. Now, Allison, by the way, was 10 at the time, and she thought we were having a mustard drill. So she was kind of disappointed with there's no mustard involved. But here's the thing. It's a good thing to tell people what to expect before the disaster comes, right? I mean, you don't want to have a disaster at sea and you're trying to tell people where to go and what to do in the midst of chaos. And so it's a good thing for marriage to kind of have an emergency kit. You want to have good principles in place so that if conflict arises, you know what to do about it. Let me give you just a few of those principles. The first one is how to deal with anger. If you look at James 1:19, it says, "This you know, my beloved brethren, everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God." I've actually had people brag to me about how their temper's really bad, you know. They'll just say, "Yeah, well, boy, you get me started and I can get really mad." And I'm like, "Wow, good for you. What good has that done for you? How about the people around you? I bet they really love that you can get mad at them." Look, anger is a thing that the Bible tells us how to deal with. It's a legitimate emotion. But the thing is, most of us are slow to hear, quick to speak, and even quicker to anger. So when you get into a discussion with your spouse, remember that you love the person that you're talking to. Be sure to measure your words. One of the things that we do, first of all, when we get into a discussion, is our language begins to change. We begin to say things that can be hurtful. Sometimes out of anger, you can say something that may take some time to recover. Because, listen, words that are hurtful and discouraging are kind of like nails. You go drive them into the post. Well, you can pull those nails out, but it leaves a mark. And if you get to the point in a relationship where you're saying things to each other that leaves a mark, you're tearing down your relationship instead of taking an opportunity in this discussion to find a way to strengthen your relationship. Anger over something can force action. And this is the second thing. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. Ephesians 4:26 says, "Be angry, but do not sin." Don't let the sun go down on your anger. So you work things out. You don't hold things over. And you don't argue about old topics while you're discussing the topic that you're on. And I see that all the time in couples. They'll come in and they'll start in a marriage counseling session. They'll begin to talk about the problem, and then somebody will bring up another problem. Either one of them will bring up a problem they've had in the past, and all of a sudden they're arguing about that instead of the thing that they were arguing about to begin with. And that just compounds the problem. So you need to stay, when you start having these differences within a relationship, stay on the thing that you're dealing with and focus on that. And don't take something and put it in your pocket, something your spouse says, something that he or she brings up from the past. You can take those things and put them in your pocket, so to speak, and then later on, if you're in an argument that you're losing, you can reach in your pocket and pull out this thing and throw it into the conversation, and it kind of becomes a weapon of mass destruction. Whatever it is that you've held on to, that if you feel like you're not gaining the advantage, you bring that out, and that causes more strain and hurt in the relationship. Stay focused. Watch what you're saying to your spouse. Remember that this person you're having this discussion with is a person that you married and that evidently you must love because you gave affection. The last thing in the emergency kit needs to be patience. And patience sort of goes along with putting away the anger. Be patient with the person that you love. And if you want them to change, pray that God will bring change in their life and gently move them in the direction that you feel like they need to go. Now, if you continually push, it's going to become a point of contention. And so change, you know how hard it is for you to change. I mean, if you've ever tried to change your behavior, if you've ever tried to lose weight, if you've ever tried to make a resolution that you're going to do something different in your life from the normal pattern that you're in, change is not easy to effect. In a marriage and in a relationship, it can happen, but it needs to happen over time, and it needs to happen gently with a husband and wife being patient with each other. Denise has to be patient with me. I mean, I know it's hard to believe, but I can be kind of stupid sometimes. And just the way that I think about things. I mean, I can do things that I don't stop and think about. And you know what? When we were young and married, she used to be frustrated by that more than she is now. But now, over time, I mean, I've become patient. We learn to love each other in such a way that we give each other a lot of slack in our relationship. If you do that, I promise you're going to avoid a lot of the tension that comes later if you're not patient. All right, second thing, quick. Never lose your ID. On a cruise ship, if you lose your ID, you can't get off the boat. God forbid you lose it when you're off the boat. You can't get back on the boat. I mean, everything you do, if you go buy something, if you go here, you've got to have your ID. You've got to be able to determine who you are. And so Genesis 1:27 says, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. That is your ID. Who you are is a person who's been created by God in his image, in certain gifts and abilities that he's given to you. I mean, God is actively involved in your life, and you remember first in a marriage that your first allegiance is to Jesus Christ, is to the Word of God, and you keep your ID so that you don't lose the ability to love the person that's in the relationship with you. 1 Corinthians 11:11 says, however, in the Lord neither is woman independent of man nor man independent of woman. God created male and female for a reason, so you fulfill the role in your marriage. I mean, husbands, you need to lead lovingly your wife. You need to lovingly lead in your home. And I haven't always done that. When I was younger, I would try to pass off a responsibility to Denise for something that was my responsibility in the home to be the leader. And she wouldn't have it because she basically said, look, I'm not the one that's going to stand before God one day and give an account for our home. The Bible says that's you that are going to be standing before God to give an account. And so we need to learn to be loving toward each other within the created image that God has placed in us. Men, take the responsibility to pray over and lead your family. Don't get so busy with life that you forget to pour yourself into the home as a leader. And wives, love your husbands even as your husband loves you. Guys, I'm telling you, you love your wife the way Christ loved the church, and you're going to find that your wife wants to be supportive and encouraging to a person who's willing to die for you. I mean, if you really communicate that, guys, that's going to do an amazing thing. And here's the thing. In our marriage, Denise is focused often on my needs. I'm focused on her needs. So if I'm sitting around saying, well, Denise is a good gal, but she's not really meeting my needs. She's not serving me the way I wish she would serve me. Where's that going to lead in a relationship? I mean, it's going to lead me down a bad path, and it's going to cause tension. But if I'm constantly thinking about how can I serve my wife? How can I be ready to lift her up and to meet her needs? And if she's constantly thinking that about me, guess what's going to happen? Our needs within the relationship are going to be met because both of us are serving in the role that God has called us to in the relationship. Me lovingly leading, Denise respecting and following and kind of pushing me to make decisions and to be a godly man and a good leader and a good dad and a good papa, in our home. So if we keep our ID, we're going to hang on to that. Third thing, service is the key to unity. Romans 12:10 says this, be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Give preference to one another in honor. So there's a couple of things you can't forget if you go on a cruise. The food and the service. I remember one time we were walking to breakfast, and we needed some extra towels. And I just ran into a steward, and I said, hey, we're in cabin so-and-so. We could use a few extra towels. When we got back from breakfast, we had towels in our room shaped like animals. I mean, they were sitting on the bed, and they looked like different, it was crazy. I mean, that kind of service. You never ask anything twice. And if you go to a meal and you don't like what they're serving, just tell them what you want. And they'll show up and bring you something maybe that's not even on the menu. It was crazy. So service on the cruise ship is incredible. It's the kind of service that we need to give to one another in our relationships. Giving preference to one another has to do with being concerned about your spouse's needs more than your own. Now, this is a 25-year survey, okay? And I don't want you to pay so much attention to the statements here, because some of them you'd look at that and go, yeah, this was a few years ago when this came out, but it's based on 25 years of thousands of couples who came to marriage counseling, and then it compiled the top 5 things for a man and a woman in their relationship that they expect in that relationship. Look at the man's list. Is there a little bit of difference here between the man and the woman? Sexual fulfillment, recreational companionship. Guys are just big kids that want somebody to play with. Okay, I mean, essentially, it's good if you can find things as a couple that you can do together, because it's a good thing for the guy and for both in the relationship. An attractive spouse, domestic support, which doesn't mean clean the house and cook the meals. It just simply means that you've got a home that is decently and in order. And by the way, that takes both people to do that. I mean, you need to work together on things in the home and not have expectations that are unrealistic. Admiration. Men are big babies sometimes, and we need somebody to come along and pat us on the back and tell us that we're good, we're strong. I mean, sometimes Denise will say that to me. You know, if I come back from the gym and I'm pumped up, you know, she'll say, "Wow, you look great." I need that from time to time. And sometimes when she takes my breath away because she's put on that dress that just takes my breath away when she wears it, I mean, I tell her how beautiful she is, what it means to me that I'm married to her. And that's incredibly important in a relationship if you want it to be healthy. And then top 5 needs of women, affection. And by the way, just real quick, guys, I'm not going to hammer this point, but your number 1 need and your wife's number 1 need are not the same thing, okay? So just write that down somewhere. Affection, conversation. We need to talk. Women speak in about 25,000, 30,000 words a day. Men are lucky if they get to 8,000 or 9,000 words a day. We're not conversationalists, but we need to be with our spouse because they need to more. Did you have a good day? Yep, good. Well, what happened? Oh, went to work, you know. No. Tell your wife, wives, tell your husbands, what about your day? Sit down, have a conversation about it. Honesty and openness, women hate liars, okay? And by the way, they've got some kind of sense. I don't know what it is. But I mean, if I say something that's not true, there's ding, 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 alarms start going off. And this thing comes up over my head. Anyway, honesty and openness, financial support, and family commitment. Guys, not only love your wife, but love your family, because loving your family is a way that you're loving your wife because of the need that she has to feel that the home is secure and that you're not going anywhere and that you love her and that you love every part of the family. Number 4, when the sea gets rough, keep moving. Listen to this, Mark 6:47. When it was evening, the boat was in the middle of the sea. He was alone on the land, talking about Jesus. Seeing them straining at the oars, for the wind was against them, at about the 4th watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. He intended to pass them by, but when they saw him walking on the sea, they supposed it was a ghost. And they cried out, for they saw him and were terrified. But immediately he spoke with them and said to them, "Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid." Then he got in the boat with them, and the wind stopped, and they were utterly astonished. Yeah, I bet that's an understatement. But here's the thing. When I was on this cruise, I've been out on fishing boats before. I mean, we'd go way out in the Gulf, and, you know, the boat would be up and down like this, you know, and I'd be eating a hot dog with chili and onions, and I'd be standing in the front of the boat going, "Yeah, this is great." I mean, I don't know why, but I got on this cruise ship, and on Wednesday night, we were supposed to dock on Thursday morning. On Wednesday night, the waves got up to about 8 feet or so, and even that big boat, it wasn't doing this, but it was just a little bit of motion. Every time I stood still, this was going on, and I couldn't take it. I mean, I got green, and the only way that I could get back to my natural color was to walk. And so I walked that big boat. I could tell you anything about Royal Caribbean cruise lines because I went from the top to the bottom, every place they would let me go, because I just stayed in motion until about 5 o'clock in the morning when I collapsed because I was so tired I couldn't walk anymore. And, here's the point. The disciples in this situation were rowing against the sea. They were rowing against the thing that was trying to do them in. And even though they were going to have help, they were not going to be able to make it alone, they didn't give up the effort of working on the thing that was coming, working against the thing that was coming against them. They kept rowing. Here's the thing in a marriage, sometimes until the help comes in the form of the presence of God being the center of your relationship, you need to just keep working. Don't walk away. Be like Dory. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Just keep moving forward. Don't throw in the towel, because Jesus came at the fourth watch of the night. That's the next thing that we need to see. When the fourth watch of the night was the one right before dawn. It would be good if we would call on Jesus before we get to the fourth watch of the night. But even if that's where you are in your relationship, if you invite Jesus into the marriage, I promise you things are going to get better. If both of you will commit to Christ, to what He's done in your life, He will change you from the inside out, and your desire for that relationship with your spouse is going to be greatly increased because the presence of Christ in your life, in your marriage, if you turn to Him first. And then the third thing from that, when the disciples saw Jesus, Jesus waited to see if they were going to recognize Him, and then they asked Him into the boat. So you need to ask the Lord into, He's walking, He's there, He's available, but you've got to acknowledge Him and invite Him in if He's going to make a difference. And God will do that if you invite Him. And then the fourth thing is when Jesus got in the boat, the sea was calm and they reached the other side. Now, it doesn't mean that's going to automatically happen overnight, but I promise your marriage, and I'm going to make this promise, it's a bold one, but I'm just telling you, your marriage will not fail if Christ is in your home and both of you are serving Him and honoring Him. It will endure. But when somebody walks away or somebody's not honoring Christ, or you don't have that in your relationship, in your home, then it's oftentimes that the marriage can dissolve. The final thing, and then we're done. Love doesn't stop when the boat docks. Look, it was a great cruise. All this service, all this good stuff going on. But you know what was funny? On Thursday morning, it was obvious that the cruise was over, okay? Because they basically came and told us, get your stuff and go to this particular area and you're going to get off the boat. I'm like, yeah, but I kind of want another hot dog. I want another, could I get another? Nope, it's time to get off the boat. Cruise is over. Now, they weren't quite that harsh, but it was clear. You get your stuff, you take, your luggage has colored tags on them, and they tell you to go with the other people that have the same colored tags, and when you get there, they open these ramps, and you get off the boat. Now, here's the thing. We were in a perfect environment as long as we were on the love boat, so to speak. But Denise and I, when we walked down that ramp and got into the parking lot, it was obvious we were back in the real world. And that's where marriage has to work, in the real world. It's not, all the love boat, just think about it, the word eros, there's a Greek word that's a very selfish kind of love, and it doesn't flourish in a marriage. It's good to have it, but you can't build a relationship because eros is selfish. It's all about you and what is happening with you and your needs. You build your marriage on agape love, because agape love is a giving love. It's a sacrificing love. It says, no matter what, I'm going to love this person. I may have to sacrifice, but I'm loving them. And listen, folks, Denise and I have been married 45 years. Denise, come on up. Denise and I have been married 45 years. And I got to tell you, we're still in love with each other. There's not a point that you get to, at least we haven't gotten there yet, where we just kind of go, okay, I guess we've made it this far. We're just going to ride this thing out to the end. It doesn't work that way. Look at her. I know, I'm embarrassing. But I look at her in a way that reflects 45 years of commitment, of love, of family. know how many people, they never get to this point where they can look back and see the fruit that God produces when two people love each other the way God has called us to love them, as an example of how Christ loves the church. And I know there's a lot of things that can wreck a marriage, but God did not intend that to be the case. He can bring peace, and he can bring stability in the home. Come on up, babe. I'm going to tell you, Dave's going to come up too. He's going to ask us a couple of questions. I know we're almost out of time, but I just wanted to have an opportunity for both of us. And I've been talking a lot, so I'm going to let Denise talk more. But I wanted to tell you how we met, a little bit about our history. We were both at Limestone College. It wasn't a university back then, and it's not even a university now. It's gone. But the way I met her was, I saw her unloading her car, getting boxes out of the car. We were moving in. We were freshmen. And I kind of thought to myself, yeah, I like her. And so later, it turns out we have the same advisor for classes, Mrs. Simpson. And so it's on the second floor of the Carroll Music Building. So I'm going up there, and guess who's there? Denise is there. She's got we got the same advisor. And there's this cane chair sitting outside the door, and it was the only chair around, and I offered Denise the chair, and she sat down, and she went all the way to the floor because the bottom of the chair had it. We really couldn't tell that. And so I rescued her from the chair. I pulled her up out of the chair, and that's when I really decided, yes, I want to I want to pursue a relationship here. Well, I was pretty pedestrian about it. I mean, it took that semester and part of a next semester of me. She was a music major, and she would be in a practice room, practicing the piano. And the Carroll Music Building had these huge windows, and they would be open in the spring, and I would go, and I would know she'd be in there practicing, and I'd climb up on the ledge outside the window, and then I would just kind of lean in and talk to her. And over time, in class, and we had a lot of classes together. We were music majors. We became really good friends. And after a while, that turned in, for me first, a really big love for her. And it took her a little bit longer to get to the point, I think, where she decided that she loved me. But I was patient about that because I really had decided this is the girl that I want to marry. So, you give your side of it.
Well, he's being very kind because actually, I think you said that when you approached me again after I when I fell through the chair, I could not get up. So he had to get me out, and I was extremely embarrassed. So when I would see him after that, I would be like, and go the other way because I was embarrassed. But it came across to you because you said to me later that I was a snob.
Well,
so he's being very kind. He didn't bring out that part. But he's right. Then we did end up having, I guess, really almost every class together because the way it was structured, we were both music majors. So the freshman structure, we had those classes together. And once I got to know him, we were friends before we started dating.
Yep.
I didn't see him that way. I saw him more as a friend because at the time we both had someone else special at home, so
yeah.
it kind of took
Mine was not all that serious, but I had to. This guy back in Greer, he had to be cut out. I hated to do it, but it had to be done. But it took a lot of patience and perseverance, and at the time, neither one of us were really serving the Lord. And so it took place in an environment that was just a very secular environment. But our friendship did grow into love, and it's grown now into 45 years of marriage. We got married right after graduation in 1980, July 26th, and we started out in the lower part of the state, moved back up here. Long story, and then we both got saved on the same night at Ridgecrest Baptist Conference Center in 1984. And I was already a minister. I was a minister of music and youth at a church. And I can just tell you that when you're a believer and trying to do ministry, it's just much easier. It's pretty tough before, and it was shocking for the church that I wanted to, I was announcing basically that we'd gotten saved. So anyway, Dave, if you wanted to, we're about out of time. You want to ask a couple of questions?
Sure. There are folks all over the room that, come from different places in marriage. We have young people who are trying to figure out how do we get to where you are right now, 40-something years into marriage. We have some folks who have walked through divorce, and maybe they're wondering, how do I put it back together? And so, as well as people in marriage who are, saying, hey, it'd be great if we could find out the qualities that would drive us further into the future. So thinking about those three groups, what one quality would you all say would best help someone make it to your 45 in marriage?
Tell him what you're thinking.
What did she say? I didn't hear it.
No, we wanted the one that gets us to 45 years in
what
marriage.
you're thinking.
Oh, yeah.
When I think back to being a young wife, the things that I was maddest at him about were the things that he didn't figure out on his own. Later on, it got to be more comical because we were remodeling our kitchen, and this was probably 15 years ago. And we were going to replace the cabinet doors. And so I went to see the guy, and he's showing me all these things. So I come back and tell Tony, like, they've got these really neat hinges. And you go to close the door, and it won't slam. Like, it gets right here, and then it slowly closes. And straight-faced, he said, but how will I know when you're mad at me?
Well, it's true.
Yeah, it was. And subconsciously, I knew that if I slammed that kitchen cabinet, he would come in there, because Tony is very gracious. And he would say, I know I did so-and-so, I'm sorry. Or sometimes he would say, I'm clueless. And that's the thing that I would go back and say, communicate better. Because I just had these assumptions that he should know that I had this need or want or desire. And what I was really mad at him about was not having ESP.
Well, but then I became a detective in our marriage. I became an investigator. I decided to spend a lot of time finding everything out about her that I could. And you think about it, we don't really do that as much as we should. But I want to know what made Denise Border tick, and what made Denise Beam my wife, and why she would want to be with me. And so I spent, guys, you'll never understand, I don't think, until you've been together for a long time, the value of knowing your wife so well that you're clueless fewer times. And that's really helped me to understand when she's, things that she needs or wants. I can only know those, not by ESP, but by really knowing her, so that I'm anticipating the things that she needs and wants. Now, at our age, that's pretty easy, quite frankly. I mean, I still miss it sometimes, but we both have learned each other so well. And that's what happens over time in a marriage. I just want to emphasize one more time, and then we're going to have a time of invitation and response. But I want to say, stay with it. Marriage is a precious gift, and it can work. Now, if you've been through a divorce, still, that, I get it. God's presence is with you to comfort and strengthen. It's not a single versus married versus I've been married, it didn't work. Don't look at it that way. Look at it as God's presence in your life helping you through all stages. But I'm just telling you, if you're in the marriage, I'm talking to people now who are in the marriage, and maybe you've got some tension. Is it worth it to hang on and to treat each other the way the Bible says we should be treated? I'm just telling you, you've got to get to this point before you appreciate it fully. But all along the way, there are so many things that you can only experience if you stay together and allow the Lord to bring you close together in a relationship. I pray that for my children. I pray for them every day, that for Adam and Ashley, for Amber and Bobby, for Josh and Allison, that God will bless them, draw them close together, and draw them close to Him their whole life. And because that's the only way that we can find the love and the hope that we need. Now, let me say this. Some of you may be hurting this morning in your relationship. Maybe you've got things going on that are challenging, difficult. Let me encourage you to go to the Lord with them this morning. And if you need somebody to pray with you, you can come here. We'll have people down front here to be able to pray with you about any kind of relationship issues. Maybe you're not in a marriage, but you've got a relationship that is difficult, and you're trying to navigate it. Maybe it's a friendship, maybe it's somebody that you're dating, that you're thinking about, this person might be the right one. Whatever the circumstance, let me just encourage you that God, in the middle of it, will make it work. He can make it better. And we want to pray for you and to pray with you about it. So let's stand together and